Order the February 5th, 2014 meeting of the Albany Waterfront Committee. Claire, can you?
Committee Member Johns?
Here.
Committee Member McCarter?
Here.
Committee Member Nason?
Here.
Chair Pablo?
Here. Approval of minutes from the last meeting.
Motion to approve.
Comments, or do I have a second?
I've not seen the minutes. I'll have to abstain.
Are those the minutes?
Okay, I'll second it. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, okay. Item number 4, public comment. This is for items that are not on the agenda. Public like to speak?
Hello, I'm Catherine Sutton from Albany. And I'm reading from an email from Eric Custard, who is unable to be here. He says, here is the data for the ad hoc community group working to connect Bulb residents to services. The group is composed of community volunteers, East Bay Community Law Centre, Homeless Action Centre, and Share the Bulb. So far, we have facilitated applications, coordinated rides and support, had meetings with social workers, and gotten benefits for Bulb residents. 4 residents have gotten on general assistance. 2 residents have gotten on Cal Works. 8 residents have gotten on food stamps. 1 resident is in the process of applying for food stamps and general assistance. All thanks to our awesome volunteers and the community's commitment to positive outcomes for Bulb residents. Most of this work happened over 2 weekend days of volunteering at the Bulb and 2 days of getting folks down to the social services office. And I was one of those people that went down to the social services offices on Monday with 2 of the Bulb residents, and I had a fantastic day. Recommend it. They're a lively bunch, and it even makes the social services office fun.
Where did you go?
2000 San Pablo. And it was April and Stephanie who came with me.
Very good.
And April and Mark also went down that day. April and Mark would never have gone if there hadn't been someone to go with them. They've been resisting for years and years and years. And they finally did it.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine.
Any other public comments from people on the committee? Also gives us an opportunity. If not, we will move on to item 5-1, approve Waterfront Committee 2014 work plan. Does everyone have a copy of the plan? We have 3 parts of this plan: initiatives and accomplishments of 2013, policy review and initiatives for 2014, and relation to the City Council strategic plan. I'd like to start off with just categorizing and filling out the initiatives and accomplishments of 2013. Did anyone have any changes or comments on this?
Is this a staff-prepared document?
It was initiated by the staff, and then Gordon and I met with them for a while and to go over the whole process, the agenda and everything.
I see.
So there was
Okay.
some input, but I have some changes that I wanted to put into that.
And I submitted
also
some,
We also have
Yeah.
committee member Nathan.
Suggest-
Well, could you,
suggestions, yeah.
Comments, too.
could you read them, or?
They were
What you
posted
want?
on the,
they're posted online.
I know,
They're-
but for the public to hear, because, we're being recorded, so.
Anybody who is watching online can actually see them by clicking the link. It's actually posted there.
is it possible to display them? Right from our agenda. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And I did it that way because I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it here tonight,
Right.
so.
Regarding the homeless issue, I would like to describe it as the Waterfront Committee initiated city review of the homeless issue through the joint subcommittee with the Social and Economic Justice Commission. That's what we did.
That was before my time, so I have to stay neutral on that.
And what does it mean, participation on homeless task force and con? Is that just something from
Did I do that?
Rochelle's?
Did I?
No.
Okay. No, it doesn't.
Okay,
The
that's some
original
kind
doesn't
of
say that, no problem.
artifact.
Sorry, I should have checked. And I wouldn't say that, it wasn't the whole waterfront committee that was on the task force. It was just some members. It was,
Yeah, but we reported back to us, and then so the chronology is that there were a subcommittee that was formed, Gordon and I, and Social and Economic Justice. We had a few meetings. It seemed that kind of got the city interested to actually create a task force. So, and then the Gordon and Brian were members of the task force. I was an alternate right around the time Rochelle came in.
And because we all attended, we had Brown Act notifications posted because we were, 4 out of 5 of us were present at all of the meetings during 2013, more or less.
these four.
But whether we created it, I have to abstain, not having been part of that.
I don't think, we didn't create it. I mean, we started the process rolling, and I think we initiated, we
With-
brought, that was part of, as a little bit of history, it was one of the issues that was brought, if we look forward to seeing what we're setting up the goals for this year. So part of the goals for 2013, which was sent to the council, was to deal with the homeless issue, to initiate, and discuss it. So we did. And that's how things happen. So it's kind of important to understand that, because as we set our goals now for 2014, and they go to the council, if the council approves them, or it gives us direction specifically from them to proceed. So that's on that item. Design of Cove Enhancement Project. Did some design and implementation of seating areas.
Actually purchased for furnishings, right?
Well, we approved the purchase of picnic tables and trash cans, which have been put on hold, subject to the final status of the actions that are going on out
And what about those dog bags? Poop things?
That's on the list here. Very good. As part of that, we were gonna have, we put in an order, we approved an order for doggy bag dispensers, 6, which I'm not sure what's happened with those, but there isn't, I don't think there's any reason to not be installing those. That would give us a little more accomplishment from what we did. Just talk about it and approve it. Also part of that project, although somewhat distinctly separate, but as part of our design, was the bike racks. And this was, if anyone goes down there, they'll see 2 pads, concrete pads with bike racks, one for regular bicycles and one for trailer bikes. And that was done by a grant that was directed here by the Albany Strollers and Rollers. And it was a grant funded by Coca-Cola Company through Rails to Trails. So I'd like to have that in the record. It's happening. Now, part of that project, which was kind of important, because anytime people give $5,000, they like to get acknowledgement of it. This wasn't, whether it was a grant. We have not installed any kind of notice as to how that came there. And I had a discussion with some of the members with the Strollers and Rollers, and they would like to get a plaque installed acknowledging the Strollers and Rollers, Rails to Trails, and Coca-Cola, who were the funders and people who were responsible. Another thing that we worked on, Gordon and I in particular, was trying to get a maintenance plan in place and managed. And I think that has been working pretty well. What do you think, Gordon?
Well, I think once we figured out how it works, kind of, yeah. But I don't know if it's well publicized.
Right.
It's basically the system works very well the way it's designed. It's reported online on our webpage, and the city Amy sends an email to you saying what they will do when, and then they usually do it pretty quickly. As far as picking up big things of trash and dealing with graffiti, the main 2 things. That's the main thing that I've seen, that they're very responsive. Whether there's like some kind of plan to go and check in place, I haven't quite seen that.
Right.
But just the fact that they're responsive seems to do the job.
Well, I was down there this weekend, and I kind of take care of the notice board and keep that stray notices from staying up there that are in advertisements. There was some spray paint on it, some just scrawl kind of spray paint, and there was some spray paint on the on the back of the sign and on the Waterfront Park entrance sign. And I had a can of green spray paint and I sprayed over it, cleaned it up. But there was a big, one of the entire benches at the Cove was completely covered with some graffiti. And I noticed, I don't know if I copied you, but I did put an order in the Public Works Department. So you can, anyone who sees things like that can go to the Public Works page. Do you have that?
I think it's you go under I want to in one of the early pages of the city websites.
So that was something I'd like to, that may be, I think that's also an ongoing issue or be incorporated in one of our plans the next year.
Yeah, I want to, along that first top bar, the very right, you go to report, which is under that. And then under report, you have also, it's actually new now, they have a separate, a public works problem. That I used to be able to just go like a sidewalk problem or pothole, it was the same thing. But now it actually has any public works problem, and that's, you get the website. A little web form, put your name and email and we'll say what's wrong.
And I got an email back.
Yeah, and Amy sends a personal email saying thank you. So they must not get that many. They can't be that swamped. I mean, maybe if we publicize it too much. But for the main obvious things like picking up dumped garbage, anything that's in our city property, and the graffiti, they respond to fairly quickly.
Okay.
I think there's an item referring to this and down in our planned for this year. I'm referring to it as the linear park. That's really just a way to say that what the city right of way. It was actually called a linear park when it was first sort of, when those bird overlooks were made, and that was called the Buchanan Linear Park or something like that. Anyway, so I have an item we have an item I think we put on there for that.
Okay. Are there any additions to that people want to put in? Changes?
Can you just clarify the comments that Rochelle made? Is everyone, the burrowing owl habitat and the status regulatory
Okay,
requirements?
well, let's ask Rochelle. Do you?
And you have things that you've added.
Okay.
He already has.
Monitor the approval of the East Bay Regional Park District Restoration Project. Oh, wait, no. So, under the burrowing owl, initiate and review status of burrowing owl habit mitigation enclosure. Fine. Review status of regulatory requirements of Albany and respect to the management of the bulb.
And that refers to the early meetings in 2013 when we looked at the State Water Resources Control Board and the County of Alameda Department of Health issues with what was happening at the bulb.
Okay. Any more changes or additions for 2013? If not, we'll move on to our goals for 2014. Jeff, why don't you start this? Talking the whole time.
Well, I'll just summarize each of these. And first of all, the general plan update is probably the most significant policy initiative across the board in the city for 2014. And we do anticipate bringing you an update on that probably at your next meeting. To Michelle's comment about to whom to provide feedback, we'd certainly have city staff and the planning consultant here for you directly to talk to. And I think there may be points in time where it would be appropriate for committee to, if there are major policy decisions that need to be made midstream, it would be appropriate for the committee to make recommendations to the council. We haven't really, I'm not sure I can tell you what those policy decisions might be at this point or when they might happen, but they would come through this committee first.
Okay.
And then I should just add as the general plan reaches the conclusion of its preparation, is close to city council final consideration, there would be at least one other opportunity to circle back and look at the document in its entirety.
What is the next general plan meeting or?
The Planning and Zoning Commission is the city commission that is providing the most direct guidance on the preparation of the general plan, and then each of the commissions and committees are in their subject areas providing topical direction to us. The Planning and Zoning Commission will be meeting next Wednesday. The focus of that session will be, as it has been for the most part in the last number of months, is the completion of our housing element. They'll be making a recommendation to the City Council on that. And so I would say later this spring, many of the other issues that have been, will come to the forefront.
Okay, the next item was implement cove enhancement project.
Right, this is to complete, as you were talking about earlier, you've made decisions on the ordering of cove furnishings, the trash cans, the doggy bag dispensers, the picnic tables, and so forth. Staff felt it was prudent, given the activities that are going on out there right now and the potential for vandalism, that it would be probably a little bit better not to expose expensive new equipment to the potential of damage right away. And so what we're hoping is that we'll get to a point in 2014 where we can put that in. We're very anxious to do that. It's difficult to predict with any accuracy at this point exactly when that will be, but we very much want to see it happen in 2014.
Okay. What element, are there any elements you think that we can actually work on?
Well, we can, you know, the ones that we were a little bit more worried about were the expensive furnished, the picnic tables and so forth. I'm fine with going ahead to order the doggy bag dispensers, and I can't remember how much money that was, but the likelihood that those would be vandalized or damaged to the point that they're not usable, I think, is probably lower than the possibility that a picnic table would be damaged. So, you know, we can do that incremental step. Not a problem at all.
So Claire Napawan was working on this, the lead designer. She had said that she could, I think she could come back and get involved, have a student help us with that. Have you contacted her at all? Has she been in touch?
Not for a number of months. I can reach out to her.
I have a question about your concern about vandalism. Does that concern stem from a particular incident or incidents?
Not a particular one. There have been some incidents where there have been the Occupy the Bulb folks have you know, the graffiti that was mentioned is an Occupy related graffiti. There has been some attempts to kind of block the roadway in that area, and it would be an inviting target.
The furniture that we chose was supposed to be very difficult to spray paint. design with a lot of little holes in it. So that it's very unsatisfactory surface. Flat surfaces like sent you a picture of what was there. Bench was completely covered with spray paint. The entire comment. I don't want to show. I still think that we could do more of the hardscape planning. Tony could get out there and be doing.
Well, I'd suggest kind of bringing this back to the work plan, and if you wanted to enhance the wording of the work plan a little bit to make that clear, that would be great. I don't think this would be the time to get into the details of what that might be.
Okay, the next item is,
Before we move on, I'd like to ask for some feedback on that suggestion that we change implement to oversee the implementation, because that helps keep clear the respective roles. As a committee, we can advise the city council and we can oversee the work of the staff, but we are not ourselves an implementing group. When we work out there as volunteers, we're really working as an adjunct to the staff and not in our capacity as members of the committee. And it's important to try to keep those things clear as much as we can.
I'm not sure, that's the one, I don't quite.
I would agree. I think it's, yeah, we aren't actually doing the enhancement project. We are
Right.
planning for it and overseeing it, I think, is a good summation.
I agree with that.
Okay, support development of a plan to transition the city-owned portion of the waterfront into the East Shore State Park.
Here,
So this is also a separate agenda item this evening to give you a little bit more information on this, but this is kind of the, if you will, the next step in the state park implementation. This would be a role for the, absolutely, clearly a role for the committee. And as Rochelle mentioned in her comments, support and participate is clearly what we had intended, that you would participate in that.
support that too.
Could you clarify what you think is the role that you foresee for the committee in that process? There is a subcommittee from the city council, Peggy Thompson, who are the liaison from the city council to the East Bay Regional Park District. So I had assumed, you know, that they were doing it. So you came to, and when I brought that up, you felt that there was a larger role for us to play.
That's correct. I think that the role that the subcommittee, council subcommittee of the mayor and vice mayor is more to engage the political leadership of the district at a policy-making level that only they can do. The role that I would see for the Waterfront Committee is being a place where, as you know, regular basis, it's a topic of discussion among yourselves. It's also a venue for members of the public who want to stay informed and monitor the progress of the development of a plan. So, you know, I think it would be a regular route or regular agenda item for a period of time. And this would be the kind of the area where this would be the venue for community engagement on that.
And as I noted there, we have not, Albany's policy for what it wants as a city at the bulb is now almost 20 years old. It has not been updated since June 1995. And with the transition of the area to the East Bay Regional Park District, I think that the question arises, what do we want? Is that still what, is that plan an accurate reflection of the city's current desires, what we want to see from the East Bay Regional Park District? And maybe it is, but I think that it's, when a land use plan is 20 years old, it merits a review.
And then does the park district even have to pay any attention to what Albany itself wants for a park?
Well, and they
There's that
did.
question.
It's important to understand that that Albany's planning document was really prepared as input to the East Bay Regional Park District's master planning process and their development of a general plan for the area. And the general plan still stands, and it is also aging and in some ways arguably out of date. So I think that we have to assume that one day that will be updated, but I don't see how it could possibly be a negative for the city of Albany to have an updated vision of its own to communicate to the park district and the state.
I agree. That's what, so, I mean, think this is probably one of the most important issues that we'll be dealing with in this year. So it requires quite a bit of feedback from the council and direction from them as to how much or what we should be doing. Ask you to bring that up. Give us, so that there's, I think what a lot's going on is that the mayor and vice mayor are having conversations with Park District, and the city manager is part of that as well. And so there's the connection between the council and staff, and Jeff gets involved to some extent with that. And you're able to, I think, best give us some pretty clear idea by in 2 months, what we could be doing.
Correct. And again, some of this blurs into a subsequent agenda item. But the basic idea here is with the support that the city manager and the elected officials are getting from the district, we're encouraged that we're at a level of dialogue with the district that they would like to work with us and support us to prepare a transition plan. And I think we're at the early stages of what could be a very important and a very positive planning process for the waterfront.
You want to discuss the next issue?
We don't have anything real specific to mention here, other than it continues to be an area of emerging research and attention regionally with climate change and adaptation to sea level rise. Some of the other regional agencies are doing some intensive work on this, and we'll keep monitoring it. particular BCDC is doing some work, and as from time to time, when we get information, we'll bring it back to you. And obviously, as you look at climate change, the waterfront is where it's going to most immediately affect the city of Albany.
Okay. Support parking policy that promotes use of the waterfront.
Yeah, this is here in recognition of the issue that I think we discussed, perhaps it was the last meeting, that we acknowledged the committee had some concerns about the restriping of a red zone along the Buchanan entrance into the waterfront area. What used to be basically a faded red zone has been restriped as a red zone, and as a result, as a practical matter, there's less parking along Buchanan near the bird watching platforms. And we recognize that was done with consultation, it was done by the police department with consultation with us. And we realize that that's an inconvenience for some of the park users, and that's something that we'll continue to work with our public safety officials on, to try to make the park as accessible as possible to those who who want to use it, but also give our public safety officials the tools that they need to ensure public safety. So there's a trade-off, and I just don't want to. I want to assure you it's not being kind of brushed under the rug and ignored.
Well, related to that, I want to remind that we provided 18 parking spaces for bicycles in a good area, and that's called promoting use of the waterfront park. Easier.
And I think we should acknowledge the generosity of Golden Gate Fields in letting people park there for beach recreation. They have been very tolerant with our beach cleanups and so forth. They have been very kindly making parking available to people coming in.
It's true. Improve information on webpage and expand mechanisms for community outreach and communication.
I believe this one was taken from the work plan from last year.
This again is just to acknowledge something that if we had just a little bit more time, we know we could do a nicer job with our webpage and be a little bit more proactive about some events and best practices and things like that. And we do use these work plans pretty regularly to make sure we're not forgetting things, and we do triage and work on the things that seem to us to be the highest priorities for the community. But when we can get to it, we will come back and work on this.
Okay, monitor the approval of the East Bay Regional Park District Restoration Project.
This is, and Rochelle's comment on this, I think, is spot on. The project technically has been approved by the district. It's going through a legal challenge right now, but the district is optimistic that it will be resolved and that the project will be able to go forward, and they're anxious to do that. They have the money, they have many of the permits. Many of the elements of the project are not particularly controversial. There are some elements that are not necessarily controversial, but are subject to the litigation. So we're reaching out and encouraging the district to do what they can and to be prepared to move forward with the project when the legal process runs its course.
Okay, evaluate ownership, management, and regulation of the publicly owned waterfront, Albany waterfront. Clarification, you were talking about the publicly owned waterfront by the city of Albany or by the general? All the different.
I'm not sure what that means.
Well, I think the way it's written was intended to focus this particular action item on the non-Golden Gate Fields property. So it would be essentially the district and the city-owned properties. And to the degree that there's state leases involved as well, I think that could be lumped into that category of publicly owned.
Okay. Rochelle wanted to put the word control in, and I'd like to have it a little more clarified as to all the publicly owned land, the Albany water.
Great.
Okay, collaborate with East Bay Regional Park District on Measure WW funds. Is everybody clear what the Measure WW funds are? Do you have an idea of how much potentially available?
I don't recall the number off the top of my head. I don't want to kind of wildly guess. But there are funds available for the Cove enhancement area that, your project of the picnic tables and trash cans and so forth, that was WW funds. And there would be remaining funds to do other enhancements in that general area.
Well, I'd like to clarify a little bit about this. The Cove Project $50,000 grant came from there's a per capita grant that the city received of $771,000. City of Berkeley, which is approximately 10 times bigger per capita than Albany, got like $7 million. And that was monies that were to be used by the city. It's money that we pay as part of our taxes to the East Bay Park District. It comes back. So there's a variety there was money that was left over, and some of it has been going towards Pierce Street Park. So that's part of the $771,000 grant. But when I read this, I was thinking that there's another $100 million out there that was WW funds. That was for East Shore State Park and area, and monies that could be accessed in particular for, I think part of that money is being used for the beach restoration project, and more money is available for the transition, potentially.
Yeah, it's important when we talk about WW funds, there are multiple funds within Measure WW, and so those are two different things. The portion that was made available for expenditure by local government and the portion that is available for expenditure by the park district are two separate things, and they are of a different order of magnitude in size. There's a lot more funding for the park district, particularly for things like acquisition and related activities.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether any of the monies can be used for maintenance. They're strictly for.
I don't think that money can be used for maintenance. I think it is all denominated to be capital, but I could be wrong about that. I'd be happy to go back and look.
That's the impression that I had, and that's
Yeah.
why So this is a pot of money that's out there, and we need to advocate that the Park District considers using as much of that to our benefit, because you don't ask, you don't get. And there's a lot of other people out there asking. All right, create plan to improve the city-owned linear park. There is actually, Rochelle, a linear park that is a designated area. I know about it because there was, when we were discussing the WW grant a few years back, Clay Larson had a proposal for working on the linear park. And I just Googled Albany, CA linear park, and I came up with some interesting stuff. But one of which was there is actually, oh, that's a different one. It seems to be only 0.3 acres of land as described in one of the, here it is. Existing recreation resources. This is page 3.5, and I couldn't find the date. This is the City of Albany Park Recreation and Open Space Areas, and it was a survey in which they were describing the different parks, mini parks, neighborhood parks, community parks, regional parks, special use parks like the senior center, and linear parks, in which they include Catherine's Walk, Manor Walk, Ohlone Greenway, and Waterfront Trail. And under condition, it said fair, and the Ohlone Greenway were fair, and Manor Walk was poor. So there is this waterfront park that's listed as part of the park. I am not sure what it is, how far it goes. But it's part of that 80-foot right-of-way that goes from the freeway. And how far out, I mean, it goes out to the neck. Claire, can you bring up the map? Or Jeff? Of the city-owned jurisdictions? And the Cove project, you know, falls within that 80-foot right-of-way. So here. There we go. So there's the drive coming in, and the parking lot's right around here. Turn around. And so this area right here, before you get into the park, is, so there's this strip along here, and there's some signs along here, and, you know, that's our responsibility, is that area there. Now, whether the waterfront park continues, technically, it'd be nice to know how far into the neck it may be going or not. Okay, but the Cove is right here, there. There's the line in the park, so.
And beyond that, our right-of-way is part of the beach enhancement plans by East Bay Regional Park. They're going to remodel that path
Down here.
all the way out to that
Oh,
southern
yeah.
shore of the neck is being.
That's right.
Is being reinstalled.
That's right.
It's been eroded, and they're re-landscaping the lower trail.
Right.
So that is, they are going to pretty much, so they'll have it there, but up to the Cove is what was generally trying to get in this item.
Yes.
This linear park, that's the blue to the right of
Right,
from
so
the
it's
beach.
kind of, so from here, this point here, I'm not sure if I'm here, right where the Cove is, and then one road goes, there's the lower road, and then there's the upper road. There's the upper road and the lower road. Most of the lower road is part of the city-owned property, but there's the triangle, there's the split right there. And so from here, where the cove is, all the way out to here is where we would like to make sure that when people go down there, I mean, that's the part that we're responsible for, and that we keep it up.
I mean, I imagine it's possible in the negotiations between the city and the Park District that that whole strip will also be incorporated into a plan, so it may be just become moot, but just want to make sure, if it isn't, that, because right now I think it's kind of looking ratty, to be honest. This coyote brush, it's great to have the natural plants there, but it's all very leggy and tall, and then there's some kind of maintenance needs to be done. And it's not irrigated, so it dries up, and then it gets mowed once or twice a year. So it just needs a little attention, I think, along the line. So that's.
I would like to add that I think that it needs continual trash pickup.
Right.
It just is a constant trash hotspot.
So this is good. This is why we do these work plans, so you can tell us what we need to pay attention to that maybe we're not paying attention to. And I think you're probably right that everything else going on, we may have neglected, unintentionally been distracted on other areas on the waterfront. So we can do some work on this for you.
And it's a pretty discrete area, so it's like, not overwhelming at all. It's just, a lot of people don't know who's responsible to do what. So we just need to make clear what it is that we're responsible for and do it, because I think, which we'll deal with on the other item further later on about the transition, the timing of the transition is going to be years.
Years, yes.
So we've got
Right. We still have to
responsibility
maintain it.
now,
Right. You still have to maintain it now.
okay?
And it should be, pointed out that it's pretty well-known birding place, especially the lower end there.
Yeah,
It's used a lot that way.
and the birders
by
are
myself.
very anxious to get some parking back in that area, especially
They
the
would be the ones.
elderly and mobility impaired birders are eager to return. So let's keep that in mind.
Evaluate status of burrowing owl habitat and provide direction on alternative uses of the plateau.
So one of the purposes of this work plan is to get council kind of buy-in with what you'll be working on in 2014. You've already discussed and made a recommendation to the city council at your last meeting. Originally, the idea was we would have already taken, or probably by now have taken, your action to the city council. What we're doing with these work plans this year is a little bit different than in the past, and we're using the work plans. The council's asked us to use the work plans and bring to them the work plans, I should say, first, before bringing to them commission or committee initiated projects. And that way they will affirm that, yeah, they do want to, using this as an example, they would be interested in having the committee's input on the burrowing owl habitat. Or they could say, no, we're not interested. And the idea is that all the committees and commissions will follow the work plans perhaps a little bit more closely than has been done in the past. And if something comes up during the course of the year that isn't on your work plan, there'll be a process for you to go do a quick check-in with the council first before you go off and work on it. And that way, basically, the council members don't find themselves in the situation of all of a sudden getting a report on something that they didn't know you were working on. So you've already done this work, but to kind of get into the sequence properly, we've added this as an action item. Presumably, the council will comment on it and accept it. If they do, then we would immediately bring back to them probably at the following meeting, the work that you've already done.
There was,
That, I understand your explanation, but it seems as if whatever creativity or different points of view that committees, commission members might have would be squelched by that need for prior approval. I'm a little bit concerned about that. It seems, if I've heard you correctly, it seems as if we are in some indirect way seeking permission and approval for whatever we might work on, which from a planning perspective, I can understand how the council would appreciate that. On the other hand, if something comes to the attention of the committee that's not on the work plan, and we agree that it's important enough for us to address, it seems as if not only do we have to, do that, but we then have to seek permission from the council. Am I understanding this process?
I think, I'm not sure I'd use the word permission, but I think you certainly want some endorsement from them that it's a topic area that they're interested in you pursuing. And this isn't just about the Waterfront Committee by any means. I think every committee and commission has taken kind of gone off on a work project, and in a few cases we've had them spend a lot of time on something, and then the council members not want to pursue it. And so there's been an investment in time and energy on your part, on staff's part, an expectation created in the community, and then it just kind of dies. We're trying to fix that, and we're trying to do something different so that doesn't happen that way, that you get the feedback from the council sooner rather than later, at least at some very, one sentence conceptual level. You all, of course, as individuals have the ability to address the council publicly. You can contact your council members individually, particularly the ones that have appointed you, and say this is something that's really important to you, and that will help accelerate the council's acceptance of something. But we're just trying not to surprise them with work products that they weren't expecting or aren't a priority for them.
I can understand, again, I understand the logic. I don't know that I agree, but I do understand the logic. The reason that I have some reservations is it seems to me in the last couple of years, the opportunity for debate at a level that's not before the council has been shrinking. Part of it has been articulated through staff cuts and staff not being able to attend certain meetings, and I understand the whys and the wherefores, but I also feel like it's important to have multiple opportunities to discuss and debate and explore policy options. So as I understand the dynamic as you've articulated it, it seems that we are being asked to go along with yet another diminution of opportunity to discuss, debate, examine, and explore policy before it gets to the council. That's my concern. I realize it's an abstract sounding concern, but it's real.
I think it's real. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's budget, it's all monetary. Staff time is, but I believe that because of budget cuts, staff is working, overtime. And so they're trying this, this committee was cut from monthly meetings to every other month. I think that particularly is frustrating if there's, when we regard issues that we want to talk about, we basically have half the meetings to deal with them. So, but then on the other hand, it's even more important that the stuff that we deal with, we get, that there's going to be an outcome, we need this council support. I have a perfect example of this, is that the homeless task force. This was one of these items. Homeless issue was one of these items that was put forth in 2012 for 2013. It was a council, and I went down there and advocated that it become an important issue. We got council approval, and that's how things got going. So, like in particular regarding this one issue, if people here think that it's an issue that we really want the council to pursue regarding the borrowing habitat, how that could be used, we need to make sure that we go down there at the council meeting and have the issue and advocate for it in case they might not consider it a priority. So I think you're right that there's, I think it's a really good point that citizen input is being limited across the board because because of staffing. If the staff isn't there to follow up on things, and there's only so many issues that they can deal with.
If I may, I think it's more than staffing. I think it's really trying to focus in a little bit more on council priorities. And I think what they're doing is asking the committee to focus in on council priorities. And yeah, staff time is a problem, but ultimately, I'm going to work on what the city council says is a priority, because that's kind of the chain of command. And if the committee is interested in something else, it's not so much a time problem as it is I'm spending a lot of time on something that isn't a council priority. And I'm not saying that this burrowing now is not a particularly good example of that, because I don't think it's a big time sink by any means. But I think what they're trying to do is align your time, staff time, with their priorities. I wouldn't. You have to each reach your own conclusions about whether you feel like there's some attempt to kind of limit agendas or public comment. I don't think that's the case, but I respect that you have perspectives on that. In this case with the burrowing owl habitat, to be honest with you, there are other considerations. We're working and we're building, renewing our relationship, I guess I would say, with the East Bay Park District, and we want to concentrate that on the transition plan. We feel really good about that. We don't want to introduce something that might be a little bit more of a challenge for the district to deal with right now, with the Borough Now. And so, strategically, this may not be the best moment to raise that issue. Again, I don't think we should get into the details of this, but, because this isn't really, the Borough Now is not the agenda item, it's work plan that's the agenda item. But the idea here is to basically kind of align all that. And, there will be a process if something comes up, or if you're really unhappy with what the council says, there will be a process where you can go back to them and communicate that. And, obviously when your plan is presented to them, you can tell them concerns about this process. Presumably one or any number of you will be there at that meeting, at the council meeting where the council will review this, and I think you should be there to hear that and to speak to it if you wish.
I'll accept that invitation, thank you. And just for clarity, I'm not ascribing motives or agendas. I'm just talking about process and outcomes. So when you describe it as marching orders, or I can't remember the term you used, the model itself seems like a top-down model to me. And my model of democracy is bottom-up. So I see the democratic process working best when the ideas rise to the top, not come down.
I agree. I think that's well said. Okay, there's one final item that I wanted to bring up, and that is the ultimate use and of the temporary buildings that are down there as shelter. A couple months ago, I sent you an email about what could happen to those spaces. They're down there. And they would, at least one of them would be I think, a wonderful structure to be used at the park for a variety of things that could happen down there. I would like to explore that idea. I mean, did you find out how much they cost?
We have that. I'm drawing a blank on the dollar figure.
$30,000?
I think they were more than that.
60. It's something like it was something like $60,000 each or together. And when they were no longer to be used as shelter, the idea was to sell them for like half the cost. And my idea is that rather than sell them for half the cost, if we kept them and used them, they would cost them half what they would cost to build. Do you understand my math on that? Does everyone get the math on that? So
we don't have the numbers in front of us. I mean, let's not go too far with guessing. I think the numbers were much bigger. I don't think it was $60,000 or something. I think it was quite a bit more. But why don't we deal with it when we have the information in front of us?
So you're saying you'd like it as an agenda item?
Yeah, as
for a future meeting.
As something to consider. I mean, it's an opportunity for us to advocate for getting a year-round building with electricity, waterfront to be used for a variety of activities. There were, I'm trying to remember, have you ever been to the Shoreline Center down in Berkeley? Patty Donald, who was a member of our committee here for a while back. Wildlife center that was built there. It was a temporary building like that. Housed, and they had classes down there.
It's flourishing under Patty's leadership.
Right.
It's just a wonderful program and
Trying to
wonderful center.
So actually, I found in 2008, we discussed that. Potential building something like that. Patty was on the committee. So that's why I thought of it, because you don't have to build it, it's built. So what do you think about having that as part of our work, considering future use of those buildings down there?
I think it's worthy of discussion.
Included in our work plan or not?
My concern with it is that we may be intruding in an area where the city council would rather we not go. There have been a lot of very interesting ideas put out about along these lines, but I think that it's an area that's probably kind of a good example of where our involvement might not be welcomed.
How do we determine that unless we put it on the work plan?
Well, we could, absolutely. I would be more inclined to say, why don't we take that up under the rubric of updating our 1995 plan? You know, the 1995 plan is supposed to govern what happens in the area. That's our kind of park vision plan. If we want to talk about different possibilities, to me, that would be a very logical place to take that up. It would actually be probably a perfectly logical place to take up the burrowing owl habitat too. You know, it's all the vision pieces about what Albany wants to see in terms of parkland, of the public lands down there. But if it's put out as a specific item, the way that we're talking about, the way that the burrowing owl is being put out there, we are in effect inviting the city council to say thank you, but no thank you. And then if we take it up, we're kind of wasting our time. Whereas if it is part of what is a clearly legitimate function of this committee to look at at Albany's plan for the public lands, then it has a context to validate the committee putting some energy into it. But if you want to directly ask the council, I think that's fine too.
I think those buildings will be long gone before any plans get made.
Excuse me?
I think the building, any kind of planning like this gets done where we come up with ideas for what kind of structures might be there. I think that'll be far past the time that these structures are needed to be decided upon.
Right, that's why if something is going to be done with them in 6 months to a year, it would be a good idea to explore.
Might be just
How about
something,
just explore the possibility of the reutilization of the buildings down there, one or more of them, as a longer-term structure.
this might be something we present to the city council at the public comment time or something that.
Take it you don't. You're interested in including it? Read it?
Yeah, I'm interested in including it. I also appreciated Rochelle's positioning, but I didn't have anything, to add. I think, in general, my approach is, be upfront. So I would like us to be clear about what it is that we're seeking and move toward that. And if we encounter resistance, then we deal with it at the time.
Well,
And I-
that's what we're doing, is that there's this two buildings that are plopped down at the waterfront on our land, specifically on our land, specifically in the linear park. So maybe we just call it as part of the linear park, considering it, okay.
But and I'm going to suggest actually that we do the same with the burrowing owl habitat and this building. Not that I'm not in favor of being upfront, but I am very much in favor of being contextual and looking at issues like this within a context that is very clearly the function of this committee. As I understand it, this committee's essential charge is to help the city council make and keep current its planning for the public lands at the waterfront. And we're behind on that. We've got a plan dating back to '95, and we kind of sit here and people grouse about what the East Bay Regional Park District is doing or thinking about or whatever it may be. Let's take these items and put them in the context of planning for the public lands and having a good rational plan, as opposed to saying, well, we don't like that burrowing owl habitat, it's not working, let's do something else. Well, we see these buildings, we see a lot of potential, lots of good things could happen. Let's not go at it on a project basis, but go at it on a planning basis and say, what would be a more current positive vision for the whole area. And I think that's very much within our purview as a committee.
Again, I'm agreeing with your logic. I think the concern from the other side is, do we get lost, in context and planning, and therefore the immediate desires, project desires and policy desires somehow get diluted or lost. But I do appreciate your logic. That I thought, sincere and open about that.
Okay, I withdraw
Do people agree that the burrowing owl habitat should be wrapped up in that as well?
no, because it's a fate, we've already considered it. Something that we went through the whole process of. The idea that I just had was, just come up with this new idea, Hasn't been considered, hasn't been around. The burrowing owl habitat has been something that's been, literally been on our agenda for the entire 5 years I've been on the committee. So, and we've been waiting for the 5 years, it's finally expired, so. And then give us the feedback from the council on that one.
Before you move on, I want to say, I hope you're not withdrawing your idea because it's going to be a hassle for us to work out how we discuss it. If it's a good idea, I think a good idea should reign. I don't think process should reign. I think the idea should be given an opportunity to be proven.
Well, I actually consider it as part of, contextually speaking, as part of the linear park, so I will just consider it that way, part of what we want to do down there. Look at it, have a plan, literally a plan of our area, and if I have to draw it myself, I will. But, because this is one of these little parks that no one knows, if it wasn't for Clay Larson 5-6 years ago, letting me know about it, and there was a history to it, I wouldn't have known. And then I wouldn't be talking about it.
It would be nice if we could see a map.
Great. It's hard to find. Because
Well,
there's
if we
there's this
would,
mushy stuff that's everywhere. I don't know if there is one.
well,
Maybe Ann would know.
there is an assessor's map, and I added the date for it here somewhere. Gee, I thought I did. I think it's January 15th, 1942. Oh, you know what? It was in my email, I guess, not on this document. But there is an assessor's map dated to about 1942 that should show us the ownership of the Albany, of the delineation of the parcels, extending past the area of the maps that we have seen. If you go roll it up just a little bit more, no, we need up. Other direction. Yeah, a little more. Okay. If you see that very last sentence there, it says, all of that certain parcel of land described as parcel 1 in the deed to the city of Albany recorded January 15th, 1942 in Lever something, page something, Alameda County records. I think that we need to take a look at that assessor's map, and that will show us the parcels. And that particular parcel that's described there, parcel 3, is leased to the state under the lease. But how far it extends, we don't know because it doesn't show the entire area on this sketch. We have to look at the actual assessor's map to see what that parcel comprises.
The graphic that we have up, this one I believe was created, I didn't create this myself, but I believe this was created from county parcel maps.
If that's true, then there probably isn't a linear park that will still be under Albany's control after transition. I was thinking that perhaps there was some, that city of Albany right-of-way area, that some portion of that was not leased to the state, but perhaps all of it was. I think we'd need to see the assessor's map to be sure.
I'm confused what you mean by leased to the state. I know that there was a lease that was something or other from 1985, but what does, we discussed, that lease has been discussed in this committee a while back, and a lease is just a leasehold, it's not the ownership.
That's right.
So,
But when, it's a funny arrangement, Albany leased the land to the state, and the state, in turn, returned control to Albany for the purpose of Albany making the land ready to be incorporated into the state park at state expense. the various, with the exception of the area that was going to be a marina and all this kind of development that was hoped for at that time. A lot of what was envisioned, the plans have changed completely, but the lease remains in effect as far as we can tell. The Albany's goal then, and presumably, and its goal under our 1995 plan and the goal going forward of the city council is to actually comply with the lease and to make that land ready for management by the East Bay Regional Park District for the state. And the land involved includes the 3 parcels that were described there. And that third parcel, whether you call it parcel 3 or parcel 1, I guess it's parcel 3 on that map, but it's parcel 1 on the assessor's map. If Jeff is right, it includes the entire linear, the entire land in the right-of-way. But I think we need to look at the assessor's parcel map to be sure.
I think I understand what you're saying. I don't know if the lease is still valid, as you say, in which my experience with arrangements like that in real estate is that when a lease, something happens and one person was supposed to do one thing and the other party is supposed to do something else, and then there's an eventual outcome. But when neither party seemed to be performing according to the agreement, the lease probably isn't enforceable. But that's a legal decision, and I'm just wondering, have you any insight? Has the city attorney actually read this and given you some information?
I'd be happy to report if we can put this on the agenda at a future meeting. I'm
Yeah.
cautioning you, it's on a work plan.
Yeah, we looked at it in the homeless task force meetings. There was a letter by Robert Zwieben saying, I don't know, basically, let's if you care, then come up with what your reasons are for caring and what you want to be different. I do want to say this: the city, any city in California, is a subdivision of the state, where all the powers of government are in the state, and then they get delegated out to counties and cities and special districts and so forth. A lease between a state and a city is not a lease in the same sense as if I lease my house to you. It's really a transfer of jurisdiction. The agreement was that this area would come under the jurisdiction of the state for use as a state park, and Albany would go and do the things that were needed to make that happen, and so forth. We're in the position, we being the city of Albany, we're the ones who want this transfer of jurisdiction. We want to be out from under this need to spend vast amounts of money and have all this liability and all of this difficulty having this land that's just been terribly neglected and abused. And we want to have a lovely park down there in partnership with the state and the East Bay Regional Park District. So I think that even though it's hard for us to say, gee, we're going to give up everything down there, that might be a hard thing to hear, but ultimately it's very much in the interests of the city. If we can get a lovely park that complies with the vision that we've had for that area for decades, it can only be a good thing.
this is not, we're not talking about the work plan anymore. So, let's move on. If you don't- So, Jeff, relation to city council strategic plan? I'm not quite sure. Can you explain that part that you have on our work program?
All the committees and commissions have been asked to look at the council strategic plan and the, what kind of referred to as the scorecard, the summary of that strategic plan, and where it's applicable, identify what they're working on, link what the committee is working on to those strategic plan goals. And so, in this case, we've identified the general plan. Your work on the general plan would achieve one of the strategic plan goals. The work on the transition to the East Shore State Park and climate change related activities are all identified by the council as their strategic priorities for the next year or so. We're just trying to recast.
Could you put it up on the screen here, please?
It's
I have a note here that Recreation and Community Services, Police and Public Works is the lead. When the goal is to improve accessibility for the general public use of all of the Albany bulb as a waterfront park. And the metric is there is an increase in the number of visitors to the bulb for use as a waterfront park. And I would like to, once again, I brought this up before, and I think I brought it up again in our meeting that we had. What is the meaning of the Albany bulb in this document? Can you blow that up? There it is, Albany bulb. What is the meaning of that phrase? You see it as the council. Which geographic area are they referring to?
Well, the bulb, I think, is generally referred to as everything, the area that's furthest west. I don't think you should take that quite so literally. I think, what we're talking about more generally is the transition, the publicly owned properties into the East Shore State Park. The bulb is the city-owned portion of the publicly owned properties. The bulb in the right-of-way, the Buchanan Street right-of-way.
Well, okay, and the general public meaning the Albany general public or the general public?
I would presume the general public.
I mean, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, I can read this as saying that the Albany bulb is not necessarily just the lands that are the bulb being that bulbous portion at the end of the neck. There's a general usage of that phrase, and then you said, which is the Albany waterfront, the public lands. So and then it says, above that, it says, develop a plan to transition bulb into East Shore State Park. So there it's referring specifically to the bulb, but then when we discussed it earlier, and as Rochelle has just stated, that there is a jurisdictional issue of what is meant when we say transfer.
Well, but Francesco, this is a strategic vision document. This is the very highest level. And to drill down, I don't think that I doubt that there was any particular intention. I guarantee that they didn't have the January 15th, 1942 map in front of them when they adopted this plan. It wouldn't be relevant. But it is relevant to us in fulfilling our function of drilling down into details that are too minute and time-consuming for the council to pay attention to. So we are the ones who, in fulfilling that planning function, for example, might address that question. We might go out and get those documents. And by the way, I'm not saying that Jeff or Claire should do that on city time. We are all here capable of doing some research and bringing forth these materials ourselves. But that is the lower level, not this strategic vision, which is just the grand objective. And it really is our job, I think, to work on refining what exactly that would mean and bringing that to the council and saying, here's what you should mean when you say the bulb.
I'm sorry if I keep harping on these things. There's a method to my harping. Is that I have, over the years past, run into such confusion in people's language about referencing the different areas, that this is as we saw in that map, a hodgepodge of jurisdictions. And so when people give us direction, I want to know what it is what that was in their mind. And this issue will come up when we talk about the transition plan as to what we're referring to. So it's just been frustrating for me to hear, people save the bulb, or something like that. And they're referring to the bulb, or they're referring to the beach and the other stuff? There's just this mush of reference. And I'm hoping that there's a clarity, just as you are trying to seek the clarity as to what the lease refers to and what we're going to be doing. So how do we get a common language so that when we say a word and when we reference it into our strategic vision, that we're talking about the same thing? That's all.
I think it's part of our job to do that kind of footwork. I think that what they're talking about, they say the bulb, the waterfront park, they just mean we need to have a beautiful, publicly accessible place down there. And I think that it is much more in our jurisdiction to say, well, there's this parcel here, there's that parcel there, there's that parcel there, and here's who should, do what on which one in order to develop a plan that pushes that whole vision forward. But I don't think it's reasonable to expect the city council to say, to go to them and say, well, what do you mean by the bulb? And they say, well, we mean the bulb. You've been to the bulb. We've all been to the bulb. That's what we mean by the bulb. It's unreasonable to ask them, well, what about this parcel in 1942 and that parcel in 1953 and this parcel over here that's now part of East Bay Park? That's our job. That's where we can bring value to the process by helping the staff and the city council sort out those kinds of details.
Bottom up.
Yep.
Okay. Complete. End of that 5-1, 5-2. Update on the East Bay Regional Park.
Excuse me,
Well,
before you
before-
move on, can we just summarize what we have from this discussion for the work plan so that we don't walk into the council with something you've... Right, you need to take a motion to approve it, and then it will go to the council.
Okay.
So I did some track changes, and there's very little because it was unclear what you guys agreed on, so I added some things, but none of it's actually been officially agreed
So Claire is trying to pull up her notes on our work plan as we've changed it over the last hour or so.
So bear with us a second. We're just going to save it on a thumb drive and put it back on this computer.
Okay. Dare talk about anything else? We talked it out.
So someone had a comment about participation on the homeless task force. I wasn't sure as a group if you guys wanted to add more detail on that or if it was just a discussion item.
I understood it as Francesca's desire to add detail. Participation seems a bit
So
weak.
I'm happy to make changes if there's group consensus on what you'd like it to say.
Francesca, is there wording you'd like to see added to that part of it?
I had initiating city review of homeless issue through the joint subcommittee with the Social and Economic Justice.
I think you need to repeat that.
No, I can type, but I'm just unclear if that's something that
Is that
everybody
okay?
else wants to see.
I have
Yeah.
to abstain from this. I wasn't part of the committee at the time. I don't know if that's correct.
It seems more detailed, that's fine to me, but.
Okay.
Right.
City review of the homeless issue through the joint subcommittee with the Social and Economic Justice Committee. We had like 4 meetings on that issue.
I actually had been under the impression it had been staff initiated, but this may be right.
There was a subcommittee, and then the staff initiated a formation of the task force that was
Yeah.
somewhat consistent of the subcommittee, but then had more people. So it was almost 2 different things.
Yeah. Okay.
We had, the subcommittee was formed, we had the meetings,
It doesn't
then
matter. I'm fine with the language. Let's roll. Uh-oh.
The second item was In addition, by committee member Nason, I wrote it and there wasn't much discussion on that.
Seemed fine.
The what?
Reviewed status of regulatory requirements, that addition from Rochelle.
Oh, okay.
And there was discussion of the Cove Enhancement Project, but it wasn't clear to me if you wanted additional information on that in the work plan.
You are monitoring the
Did you,
legal challenge rather than approval.
No, that's in the next section. That's appropriate for 2013.
Oh, okay.
But in planning for 2014, we've got an approved project, so it's a
We
little
did-
different.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry.
but you're on a, you've combined two things there? Design of the Cove Enhancement Project. Okay, return, and under that, I was gonna, you know, the, what was it, the discussion into the final decision on choice for picnic tables and trash receptacles and dog bag dispenser. We decided,
Choosing
okay, we chose and a specific, the choice, group choice, approval of the choice for picnic tables and trash receptacles, trash and recycle bins. There's a specific decision that was made. All right? And then, as part of that, rather than having a separate item, the accepting of the grant, $5,000 grant from the Albany Strollers and Rollers from Rails to Trails project and funded by Coca-Cola. I mean, this, at least since we're not, we're letting people know what happened.
Wait a minute. Are we making a decision about a plaque today? I think that's just a whole different, at least to me, that's a whole different
He
deal.
wasn't saying that as accepting the plaque, he's just putting it, that's what we did. We got the money from them.
Okay, good.
I mean,
Sorry, the $5,000 grant from Albany Strollers and Rollers, and there was something about
via
Coca-Cola.
Rails to Trails, funded by Coca-Cola. I mean, it's just the information of how that was done. You know, as I said, we said there was and under from the
I don't feel comfortable with adding this level of detail, and I don't feel comfortable with, I mean, it's looking like a plug for a grant that was received. It doesn't feel appropriate to me here, I'm sorry. I think this should just be a very general description of the key things that we did in 2013, and I thought it was pretty good as it stood here. If we start talking about $5,000, from Coca-Cola, I suspect that we got at least $5,000 worth of professional services, donated by Claire Napawan. That's expensive. Landscape architecture is an expensive service, and she put in an enormous amount of time and effort. I'm just reluctant to pick out one thing and put it into our achievements this way.
Why?
Why? It just looks to me like an inappropriate gesture. It's a night, there are, and I'm in the fundraising field for several different organizations. There are times and places that are very appropriate for thanking people for donations.
So
But
is
to me,
Coca-Cola the hang-up?
this is a governmental, this is an appointed body by an elected body. I don't think it's the right place for this type of recognition. I think the recognition is great. There are times and places that it's right, but I just am not comfortable with it here.
I'd suggest
But I'm
something like
one,
just saying secured funding, or I don't know if we even
Yes.
secured it.
Yeah,
Or,
if
you
we
know,
secured the funding as well,
That's,
as well as
And
accepting. Did
designed.
we accept it? We're a committee. We didn't accept $5,000 from anybody. I think that's the city's, I think that's a different kind of act than what we do as a committee.
Okay, it's initiatives and accomplishments of 2013, which I think that these 4 lines that were put in here was not very descriptive of what happened.
I'd like to say one thing. You will have an opportunity to present this to council. You'll have about 5 minutes to present, in which case you could go into more detail on some of these things too.
We've already here. We've been discussing this. This is where you put it in. I mean, we had meetings for all of these meetings. Things were done, and it doesn't look, it's important. I think it's important that the decisions that were made that are shown, particularly the ones that may not be, that were done but not implemented. So we made some rather big decisions, but that weren't implemented. So let's put them in there so they can be shown what was done. And then there was something that was done. The one major accomplishment was the installation of the bike racks. And which you, for some reason, wasn't included, and I wanted included. And so, and I don't think that you were here when we were doing that, were you?
Do we have the authority to accept money? Is that something we do as a committee?
I have a suggestion, because it seems as if there's a problem with the language, and accepting is certainly not the right word. So I would use, utilization, something better than accepting. That seems to be a hang-up on a conceptual level and a legal level. But to go back to my initial question to Rochelle, is Coca-Cola the hang-up for you? Is that what's making you uncomfortable?
Yeah, I think that what's making me uncomfortable is the focus on this one particular gift. I'd like to have a sense of how that fits into the bigger picture of expenditures for the project, of gifts like Claire's donation of her very valuable time and energy to make that happen. It just feels like it's just picking out one piece in order to give credit to the organizations that were associated with it, I think it's wonderful what they did. I want to see them properly recognized, but it just doesn't seem like the right place for it. But I don't want to keep us here all night. If this is important for Francesco to put it in, then put it in. It's not a big concern, but I want to just be on the record saying I don't think that's appropriate here.
And I'm really trying to understand what is inappropriate, because the way I read it, it seems like there's a level of detail that was missing. And I appreciate Francesco's initial observation that the description of initiatives, the initial description of initiatives and accomplishments seemed a little bland and in need of further description. So now it seems like we're debating degree as opposed to the need for information.
I guess it's more, I think this should be a description of what we did as a committee. And I'm not sure that accepting the money from Coca-Cola via the granting pass-throughs, I don't see that as something that we did as a committee. But put it in. Let's move on. It's not a huge concern.
Wait a minute. This is what we did. And a lot of it was done when you weren't here. So you didn't know about it, and now maybe you know about it.
I'm concerned.
The council doesn't know about it necessarily, and this is our opportunity to bring to the council something in writing about what we accomplished this last year. Now, you know, whether you feel, if you, I don't, the level of, you know, the Albany Strollers and Rollers was an idea that they brought. This was actually the only money that was spent was from this source. We got a grant. I'm confused as to why there's such resistance about communicating to the council our accomplishments.
There's not so
That's
much
all.
resistance.
I mean, we're
Leave
trying
it
to
in.
get them, we're
Leave
trying
it
to
in.
get them to, we're trying to show that we did some work and that we got stuff done. Now, some of the stuff, as I said, we did. We spent many a meeting going over this design process that wasn't implemented. They don't know that necessarily, do they, Jeff?
I believe they do.
They know about the stuff that was purchased or the orders that were made but that weren't installed.
I believe the city managers briefed them on that.
So leave it in. It's fine. It's just I'm uncomfortable with putting in accepting money as one of our achievements. But if the others, if you're good with it, leave it in.
What happened, Jeff? Explain what happened about the $5,000.
No.
Can I
please.
suggest that you've
Can I
spent an
say
hour and a
that-
half on this agenda item? You need to wrap this up and maybe move on to the next agenda item. Either that, or if you want to individually submit comments and rely on us to kind of organize it and the best we can and present it to the council. But frankly, I don't see this conversation kind of moving towards a resolution here. I'm sorry to say that, but I just kind of have to step in.
Yeah, no, I don't think that we should be drafting as we're sitting here. I like your idea very much, Jeff, that why don't we try everybody just doing their own suggestions and sending it to the staff and letting the staff assemble this document. It's a 2-page document. It shouldn't be a
I
difficult.
guess all that should have been done before. We did it a little bit, but anyway.
How much time do we have to submit?
Could we ask by, say, next worst-case scenario, next Monday for your comments. And it may be more, but if, we're not exactly sure when this particular one is going to the city council. And so if we could get your comments by next Monday, it would be ready for the next council meeting, if indeed that's when it happens. Otherwise, we'll let you know, and then you could have more time. I would remind you that in terms of communication with us, please do it, be careful of the Brown Act kind of stuff. And if we need to reach out to one of you to get some clarification, we can do that. But don't do a kind of committee-wide communication on an item like this.
Okay.
Is that all right with everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we need a motion or
Okay.
anything?
So the motion is to further review the plan, send any additional comments to staff by Monday. And those comments will be, and we will trust staff to adequately fold those comments into the final language.
Yes. I second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Item 5-2, update on the East Bay Regional Park
Yes.
Department Beach Project.
I mentioned this briefly when in the early part of the introduction of the work plan. The beach project is going through litigation. Rochelle was kind enough to provide one of the most, or probably the most recent substantive legal filing, which is the district's response to the plaintiff's motion to have the district do additional environmental study. My conversations with the district staff, they haven't given me any insights into the litigation process that I can share with you publicly. What they have told me is that they're continuing to work on the project. They have, as I mentioned, they have the funding for much of it in place and continuing to pursue applications for the parts that they don't have. They're pursuing the permits that will ultimately be required to do the work, and they are, I think, as committed as ever to doing the project, and will probably act pretty quickly once the litigation process runs its course. To refresh your memory, it's probably a 2 or 3 phase project. The first one will be to restore the neck, and then the beach and the parking lot restorations would be at a future phase. So I'm pleasantly encouraged by their continued enthusiasm for the project, and I hope that sometime soon we can report back to you that it's about to start. There also is a court hearing, I believe it was March 20th. Yeah, March 20th is a court hearing date on the litigation, which is a major milestone in bringing the litigation to a close. Usually the courts will issue a ruling a few months after that hearing.
That date again?
March 20th.
Any comment, discussion?
Um, 5-3?
5-3?
Okay, this is, excuse me. This is a new agenda item for you, that something has emerged out of some conversations that our new city manager, Penelope Leach, has been having with the senior management at the Park District over the last month or two, and also with the Coastal Conservancy, which is a state agency that manages some of the statewide bond issues. that voters have approved over the years. And the city has been invited to prepare a application to the Coastal Conservancy that will probably go to the Coastal Conservancy at their May meeting. They meet every 2 months. And this would be an application for some funds to prepare what we're using as kind of a working title, a transition plan, to identify the work that needs to be done to get the primarily the city-owned property, but it could be, in a sense, all the publicly owned property, get it ready for implementation by the Park District and the state park system into the East Shore State Park. Another terminology you could use on that would be a conceptual plan to develop a rough idea of the costs, what needs to be done in terms of making sure that the integrity of the landfill cap is maintained, that the safety issues that have been identified over the years are mitigated appropriately. Also identify at kind of a high level, very high level, the types of improvements that need to be made as a part of ultimate improvements to the East Shore State Park. So, as an example, maybe not necessarily identifying the precise alignment of a trail, but maybe the general notion of where a trail might go, general concept of where a trail may go. There would be some work on the regulatory framework that we have to go through. This is a very complicated piece of land. A number of agencies will review whatever work is done out there and the permits and so forth that might be required. And as part of that, the environmental review that's required under the Environmental Quality Act would be evaluated and perhaps completed as a part of this hopefully completed as part of this transition plan. There would be some public engagement along the way on this process that, again, I would anticipate the Waterfront Committee would help manage, and that we will be using this plan as kind of the foundation for negotiating any additional agreements that need to be negotiated between the various agencies involved. It would also be used as the basis for seeking the big chunk of money that we need to actually do it, the millions of dollars or whatever it's going to be. We want to get an idea of what that dollar figure is going to be, and then also get an idea of what the vision is, so that we can dress it up and get people excited about helping us implement the project. It's not the final plan. The thing that actually is used for construction would follow later on. That would be much more detailed and specific and deal with all the very the particular details. But this is more. I think it's more than a vision document. I think it would be again in the kind of the planning realm, a conceptual plan. At this point, we're still kind of brainstorming about roughly how much money to ask for, but it'll probably be something in the neighborhood of $150,000. And we're planning to go to the City Council for their review. The City Council does, on any of our grant applications, does usually a quick review and approval for us to apply for the grant. And so we're planning to do that at their next council meeting, which is not their next council meeting. Yeah, their next council meeting, February 18th. And then we were going to try to get this into the Coastal Conservancy by the end of the month. Be happy to answer any questions.
Bravo.
For the general public to know, what kind of a timetable is this? Say, apply for a grant, you get a grant, process in very rough.
Yeah, very rough. I would guess probably a year or so. The Coastal Conservancy would consider it in May, so nothing. We're doing work between now and then. If we're fortunate enough to have their approval, it's probably a month or two to work through the grant agreements and administration details, hire a consultant to do it. We'll go through a public process on that. And then once the consultant's underway, which is probably in the fall, then I would guess, give or take a few months, probably about a year worth of work. It's possible to accelerate this, but it's also a complicated piece of property, and there's going to be lots of opinions, and so we need to build in some time to listen to that and respond to it, and have the community review that I know everybody's going to expect.
What is the necessity for a conceptual plan when the Park District already has a plan for that land?
They have, the East Shore State Park Plan is very general, and it doesn't go down to really the level of how much work do we really have to do on removing non-native vegetation or habitat enhancement or removing rebar. We have to do it all over the place, or can we just focus it in on the highly trafficked areas, as an example, if it's the safety issues? And the people who are going to ultimately going to ask for money, we believe are going to want to see more detail than what we have in the East Shore State Park Plan right now.
Then after the end of 2015, you could see you're presenting something to the council.
Yeah.
And then it could take another year or two to implement the transition.
Then it all depends on how long it takes to get the money. And the sooner we get this done, the sooner we can ask for the money. It's really hard to predict when money will be available. It will be taxpayer funded in one way or the other, whether it's state money or regional money or perhaps some other wonderful granting agency someplace who sees the wisdom of this. That is really hard to predict.
I did a Google search on the Berkeley Meadow and came up with an article which was interesting to read about regarding the dedication. It came up at the dedication of the Berkeley Meadow, and the article was talking about how simply transferring ownership does not make a successful park. And this is where they were referencing the Berkeley Meadow. These lands were left essentially unregulated for decades. Off-road vehicle drivers, illegal dumpers, and urban campers, along with a mix of opportunistic plants and animals, made the most of these open spaces. If you visit the Albany Bulb today, you can see a closer approximation of the landscape that has grown up on its own in the meadow. Park planners were faced with competing user groups advocating everything from organized sports to dog walking to bird watching. In the end, the meadow was designated as a wildlife habitat. Today, a 3-phase, $6 million replanting of the meadow has been completed. First, non-native vegetation was scraped away, then the land capped with clean fill and contoured to form naturally filling seasonal ponds. Goes on to describe what happened there. So there was $6 million that was spent on the meadows just after it was transferred, the ownership. I'm not sure where the $6 million came from, but I don't think the citizens of Berkeley ponied up the $6 million. And I don't expect the citizens of Albany would have to spend the money for upgrading, doing what was necessary after the transfer. Any other discussion? Do I hear a recommendation?
I would like to move support in concept for the grant application. I
Second.
guess that's all that's required. Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Very good. Item 5-4, selection of chair and vice chair for 2014. Time for new chair for next meeting. I would nominate vice chair Gordon to be the new
Second.
chair. Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do I hear any recommendations for a vice chair?
What's the normal protocol for that?
Most
Second
committees
most
and commissions
senior.
would just try to rotate it around. So if you haven't served as a vice chair, which would be Brian and Rochelle, that would kind of normally, you'd be next in line if you wanted to, but sometimes people choose to do that.
Then I'm going to nominate Brian Johns for vice chair.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done. Item 6, announcement communications, information only. Announcements?
Oh, we've got an all-dog cleanup coming up. Join us. February 23rd, if I'm not mistaken. It's a Sunday. And we are looking at some very interesting cutting-edge devices for the removal of microplastics from sand. We have, as I'm sure everyone here is aware, we have a tremendous microplastics issue at the Albany beach. For whatever reason, it's an extreme hotspot for gathering that small deteriorated pieces of plastic. And at times, after a high tide, you just see an astonishing thick layer of this stuff. And there's an organization called Sea Turtles Forever in Oregon that goes out to the coasts. They get volunteers to clean up this stuff using electrostatic screens, which are manufactured in Germany. And we're getting a few of those in cooperation with the Park District, and we're going to try to get volunteers out and see if we can make progress on that problem.
What's the date of the cleanup?
I believe it is Sunday, February 23rd in the afternoon. And there will be posters up within a couple of days around town. And would love to see everyone out there. And we would not discuss committee business.
Oh. As my first, we have future agenda items. Gordon, as the new chair, I'm going to let you handle that one.
Okay. Does anybody like to suggest future agenda items?
We have,
I submitted some agenda items, all of which I think are covered on our initiatives for 2014. The only thing that I suggested that has not been touched upon was the issue of the fires that keep occurring west of San Pablo Avenue. We've had 3 in the last few months. One by UC Village, one at the North Basin Strip, just south of the Tom Bates Sports Complex, and now the latest one, the burning of the library on the Bulb. And it strikes me as a concern. That seems to me like an extraordinary number of fires in close proximity to one another. All of them were thought to be, at least initially, associated with homeless encampments. Obviously the library, but the other 2 as well. And I think that the issue of whether there is anything that can or should be done to reduce the risk of ignitions is something that it might be helpful to hear from the fire department about. But it's just a thought. It seems like we've got plenty on our plate, but it's an issue that I think we should keep our eyes on.
And what about the date of the next meeting? Does April 2nd work for everyone? 2 months from now?
Works for me.
On my calendar. Okay.
So on as an agenda item, would you have the work plan would come back to us, Jeff?
By April, the work plan will have been approved by the city council. Happy to bring the final plan back to you, and you may want to have a discussion about whatever feedback you get from the council. That's fine.
And will you advise us when you know that it's going up to the
Yeah.
council? Thank you.
We'll know, we might know next day or 2.
Great.
Yeah, it might be just that we'll have an item on that agenda the next meeting for getting feedback from the city council on our work plan. Therefore, are we
And
done?
if it's approved by the city council, I'd like to discuss the linear park.
Possible plans for it?
Yeah.
All right.
And if the city doesn't have it in its files, I will volunteer to try to seek out a copy of the assessor's map from 1942 that shows that delineates the full extent of that parcel number 3.
We have that readily available. You don't have to.
Pardon?
We have those available.
I would think that we would
take
here
this
in this room.
30
but-
seconds to get it if you really wanted to look at it tonight.
Okay, very good.
Anything else? So the next item would be calling for an adjournment.
Do you need a motion to that effect?
I don't think so.
You just
Okay.
adjourn the meeting.
I declare the meeting adjourned.
Very
Thank you.
good. Great job.